Greetings, fellow entrepreneurs. Welcome back to bizzy.tv. My name is Mike, and we're back today to continue working on the product idea, roughing out the minimum viable product that we're going to produce as a first stab at the product itself. But before we jump into that, I wanted to revisit something I did a couple of days ago where we were roughing out the revenue model to make sure that this business even makes sense. So, and also I've received a surprising number of comments asking me to use the whiteboard more frequently. And by surprising, I mean 0. So we're going to use the whiteboard again today, but I'm going to spice it up a little bit by actually doing some math. Don't worry though, we're only going to do 2 equations and they're very straightforward, but this actually took me a while to research this information about ad-based revenue. It was actually harder to figure out than I thought it was going to be. When I went looking for information on this, it turns out there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of changing information over the last few years on how ad-based or how advertisements are paid by Google, for example, when you use their AdSense product. So if you're looking around for information, you wind up finding a lot of older posts that are sort of not accurate anymore. And you also, when you search for Google AdSense, you also find a lot of scams and things out there. So actually finding good information is harder than I thought it was going to be. So I thought you would appreciate sort of seeing what I came up with. And I tried to boil it down because I don't really want to get into this in a lot of detail right now. I just want to make sure that what we're doing makes some kind of sense and there's some light at the end of the revenue tunnel. So let's jump into the whiteboard, except it's not coming up. Hold on a minute. Okay, I think I have it working now. So let's jump into the whiteboard and we'll get rid of this stray line. And where we want to start is just talking about what a couple of terms that Google defines for ad-based revenue. And the first one that they use is what's called the click-through ratio. So let's document that here. So the click-through ratio, and you're going to see this referred to as the CTR. And it's kind of frustrating because you'll see CTR mentioned on a zillion web pages, but they never actually define what that means. So I had to chase that down. That means what the click-through ratio is what it says is if 100 people see the advertisement on your web page, this click-through ratio is the percentage of those people that actually click on it to view the advertisement. And that's where the majority of your ad revenue comes from, is from people clicking on the advertisement. Now, once you figure out what CTR stands for and what it means, it's actually even more difficult to find an average CTR that websites get today when this is implemented. And this is where older information is kind of misleading, because in the earlier days of the internet, people were a lot more likely to click on advertisements and banners and banner ads and that kind of thing. And as people have become more familiar with the internet, people tend to filter these things out in their brains automatically. So the click-through ratio has decreased a lot recently. But the best numbers that I could find claim that currently the CTR is typically between 2 and 4%. And a lot of this matters how you implement the advertisement as well. So if you use a banner ad at the top, or if you use an image on the right, it's easy for people to filter that out when they're looking at the page. So it kind of depends on if you put the advertisement in line with the content, or if you kind of if you make a pop-up that they have to dismiss before they can continue. You'll get widely varying CTRs depending on how you insert the advertisement into your page. But we're going to just assume that this is between 2 to 4%, somewhere in that range. Then the next term that I found was called the cost per click. And you'll see this referred to as CPC in a lot of websites that talk about AdSense. And so the cost per click is how much money you get paid when someone clicks on one of your advertisements. So again, and this number is set by the amount that the advertiser wants to bid for that click. So if they really want people, or if they want their advertisement showing up on a lot of websites, they'll bid a higher number, and then you'll get paid more when someone clicks that. So again, this is another number that's really hard to find a typical value for, but from the best that I could find looking around is about 40 cents per click currently. So we'll just assume, if I can get the keyboard to go away, we'll assume that this is about 40 cents currently per click. Okay, so then with this information, we can do our first exciting equation here, and we can figure out that the amount of money that we're going to get per month is going to be the number of impressions, or the number of times someone sees an advertisement on our website. So it's going to be the number of impressions times the click-through rate ratio times the cost per click. So what we need to figure out then is, and remember from the first stream, we said that what we'd like to arrive at, our goal here is $20,000 per month in revenue. And so, and then we have an approximate click-through ratio, just conservatively speaking, let's say 2%. And then with the cost per click of 40 cents. So now what we can do is find the, what we can do now is solve for the number of impressions that we have to have to achieve our goal. So what I thought we would do then is flip over to Excel and make a spreadsheet. So it only gets more exciting, guys. We've done note-taking, whiteboarding, and now we're flipping over to Excel so that we can do some, whoops, I thought I had Excel. Here we go. So we can work out the math here. And this is web-based Excel. So let's start with our impressions per month. Well, let's do impressions per day. And let's say that let's just guesstimate 10,000 impressions per day. And then let's convert that to per month over here in this column. So let's see, we'll put in here per month. So to convert this from impressions per day to impressions per month, we'll just say B2, cell B2 times, that was impressions per day. So we'll multiply by 365 days in a year and then divide by 12. So that's going to give us 304,166 impressions per month if we're doing 10,000 per day. Then we can put in here our click-through ratio. And we said that that was conservatively 2%. And then let's put in our cost per click. And we said that was 40 cents conservatively or on average. And so now we can compute our revenue per month. So it's going to be the impressions per month, which is cell D2, times the click-through ratio, which is B3, times cost per click, which is B4. So what we see here is that 10,000 impressions per day only gets us to $2,500 a month, and our goal was 10,000. our goal is 20,000. So we actually need to increase this by 10 times. So we're going to need 100,000 impressions per day to achieve the revenue that we're looking for. So that's kind of the first equation that I wanted to work out. So I guess the question then is that reasonable? So can we build a product that brings in 100,000 impressions per day? I don't know. That's what we have to think about. At first guess, it sounds reasonable. So that brings me to my next formula. So the second formula is trying to figure out, is that reasonable to bring in that much traffic? So for this one, I came up with another equation. So let's go back to the whiteboard here. And let's see if we can scroll down to the second equation. And for this one, I'm trying to figure out impressions per day based on how many customers that we have. So if we start with the number of organizations, let's say then impressions per day, whoops, is going to be equal to the number of customers that we have. So let's say the number of organizations that we have times the number of events per organization per week. So thinking of the typical customer that we're targeting, this value is how many events does the typical customer have per week? And then we're going to multiply that. This is multiply. We're going to multiply that by the number of attendees per week, per event. And then we need to multiply that by the number of impressions per attendee to register for an event. And that's going to give us the number of impressions that's going to give us impressions per week. So we need to convert that to a monthly number, and we'll do that in Excel. So if we start with the number of customers that we have, or the number of organizations we have, we multiply that by the typical number of events that each customer has per week. That's the second value. Then we multiply that by the average number of attendees per event, and we multiply that by the number of impressions per attendee. That should get us to, and then there's going to be a conversion factor to get to per day, but we'll deal with that in Excel. But that will get us to impressions per day. Once we figure that out, then we can plug it back into that first equation that we have, and we can figure out the revenue that we can expect based on the number of organizations. So hope you're still with me there. I know math is not the most exciting thing to watch, but that's where we're headed. So let me go back to the spreadsheet here, and we'll key all of this in. So let's start with the number of organizations that we have, and let's just put 1. And then let's put in our events. This is all average numbers or guesstimates right now. So the events per organization per week. And let's say that your average organization has 1 event per week that they're going to register attendees for. And then let's put attendees per event, and let's just guesstimate 10 attendees per event. So think of a scout meeting that's probably going to have 10 attendees. And then this one's a little interesting because this depends on implementation. So how many advertising impressions do we think it's going to take to get someone signed up for an event? So think about, they're going to receive an invitation, an email from the coordinator. It's going to say, click here to sign up. From that point to the point that they're done registering for the event, how many times are they going to see an advertisement on our site? So I think they're going to see one when they come in to look at the event. They're probably going to see one when they click to register for the event. And they're probably going to receive one as part of the email that comes to them to confirm their registration. So I guesstimated this at 3 impressions per attendee. And so now we can calculate impressions per day overall. So that's going to be the number of customers that we have, or the number of organizations, times the number of events that they have per week, times the number of attendees per event, times the number of impressions per attendee. And that's going to give us impressions per week. So now we need to multiply by 52 weeks in a year and divide by 365 days in a year. And that is giving us an average of 4 impressions per day per organization. So it doesn't sound like a lot, right? So now we can finally calculate our revenue per month using the same math that we did up above. Now that we have impressions per day, we can calculate B11, which is the impressions per day that we just figured out, times the click-through ratio, which is B3, times the cost per click, which is B4. And that's giving me a much different number than I got earlier. Just a moment. Oh, that's impressions per day, and we want dollars per month. So we need to multiply this by 365 divided by 12. So what we find is that we can expect to receive about $1 per month per organization, according to this math. So then the answer is that we will need, if we get about $1 a month per organization, we need, to reach our goal, we need 20,000 organizations using our system that have this average level of activity. Now there's ways we can tweak that in the future. For example, if we encourage organizations to use the system for events they may not have used it for, let's say committee meetings, leadership meetings, more meetings than they would have done, then this number might increase here. If the organizations that are our customers wind up having more attendees showing up, so think about a parent-teacher organization holding a large event for the whole school, they may have hundreds of attendees at that event. So my estimate of 10 attendees per event might be low. I'm not sure. I'm just trying to be conservative here. And then impressions per attendee, we can certainly find a lot of ways to drive this up. I mean, we could put advertisements all over the place, and we could make the process for registering for the event much more longer and more tedious, and drive them through more pages before they're done. But at some point, you're going to also drive users away by taking that approach. So there might be some ways to increase our impressions per attendee, but we'll have to experiment with that and see how much we can get away with. So there's a few things we can tweak. Another idea is to go with the model that a lot of the competitors use, which we looked at on Tuesday, where they offer a free offering that's ad-based, but then they also offer a pay model. And that's probably because they're only making about $1 a month per organization. So they introduced a pay model to increase the monthly revenue per organization. So that's another option that we have. But I didn't want to go any further than this. I just wanted to do a rough back of the envelope estimate on revenue. But I think for now we can just make an assumption that the revenue we're going to see from this business, at least the way we're imagining it today, is going to be about $1 per month per organization. So we want to just keep that in mind. That's all I wanted to go over on that today. Beyond that, I wanted to start talking about the minimum viable product so that we can start implementing that minimum viable product next week. So thinking back to yesterday's interview with the future customer, what she related to us was minimally she needs a roster for tracking who's in the group. So we'll need some kind of registration system to register with our database. And she wants a calendar system with activities that people can sign up for. She wants those events to be at a fixed address that she can share in email. That should be doable. She wants to send those links in email, and then she wants email reminders for those events. So those are the minimum requirements from the customer. I don't think it's too terribly difficult to get this put together. So let's use this as a start, and let's go to today's notes. And let's just rough this out a little bit more. So the roster. Now, here's where I've been doing some thinking. And what you see happening a lot in web-based systems these days is that they don't require you to make yet another account. What they do instead is they'll have a button that says, click here to log in with your Google account, or click here to log in with your Facebook account, or your Twitter account, or your Microsoft account, or whatever that is. So I think that's the simplest way that we can get people using this, is to just let them use an account that they already have. So what I'd like to implement for this minimum viable product is registration, like a user account registration via, let's just say Google. We won't do all of the different options. We'll just stick with Google initially, because I think most people have a Google account at this point. So we'll stick with that. And then let's start with and then we'll build out the roster so that the group leader can see who's in the group. So we'll start with those two things. And then we'll add on the calendar system with activities, and we'll add on the sign up process for that. Additionally, we want this thing, in this day and age, I think we need to start from the beginning making it 100% encrypted using SSL, the secure socket layer in the browser. It gives people a lot more confidence that they're using a legitimate product. And now let's think a little bit about the demographics of the person who's using this system. So this system is going to be used by people that don't have training in this system, and they need to be able to get up and running really fast. So we want, as much as possible, we want a zero learning curve. And if you look at user interfaces out there and you think about what user interfaces have you seen that have really gentle learning curves, the first one that comes to my mind is Apple. And so if you look at Apple's user interface, how do they achieve that gentle learning curve? Well, one of the things they do is simple. Everything is very simple and straightforward and self-explanatory. But they also restrict the scope of features. So one of the ways Apple makes it easy is by limiting what you can do to just what you need to do, and not everything else that you might want to do. So I think it's going to be important as we begin implementing this to stick with these concepts that we've outlined here that we're going to implement, and try to not go much beyond that until we get these really nailed down and get some customer feedback. And then following these other things here. Now, as we're building out the minimum viable product, I think we also want to be thinking a little bit more long-term for where we're headed. So let's say things to keep in the back of our head. And she also talked about co-leaders can't edit each other's event postings. And she also mentioned here, as a co-leader, she couldn't see who was signed up and couldn't see contact information for attendees. So She mentioned a number of times that if you have multiple leaders of the organization, they need to be able to see, they need to be able to share responsibility for that organization. So we need to be thinking about that as we begin our implementation. So think about having more than one administrator per organization. And let's also think about another thing she mentioned, which was having different organizations collaborate together via this system. I don't know what exactly that's going to look like, but it's something just to keep in the back of our heads to think about how could several organizations kind of collaborate via this online system. I think that's a feature that none of the other systems out there have today, or not that we saw during our survey of the competitors anyway. So if we can figure out a way to do that, that could be a big differentiator like we talked about on the first day. So how could multiple organizations work together? I'm putting these things here. We don't want to implement them now, but as we begin implementation of this system, we're going to be making decisions that affect how difficult it is to do these things later. So if we have these in the back of our heads now, we can make decisions that will make these easier down the road. So that's why we want to be thinking about that. Another thing to think about in the back of our head, and this is actually a requirement. Let me put it up here. We want this to be mobile friendly, very mobile friendly. A lot of people are on the go. My wife, for example, she's constantly out running around, and she's the customer that we interviewed yesterday. So she needs an interface that works with her phone. And so we're going to make this mobile friendly right from the start, scaling to small screens. And we didn't really look into this on the competitors' products, but I think Sign-Up Genius has actually been around for a while, so I don't know, it may or may not have a mobile-friendly, scalable design. Some of the competitors do have mobile apps specific to the phones that run natively on the phones, so they could have a head start in this area. But I think there's some tricks we can play if we make the assumption up front that we need to be able to scale to mobile devices. There are some tricks we can play to make that happen as we go into the design process. So I think it's important to think about that right now. And then along the same lines, it needs to be simple, but it also needs to look simple so that people will not be afraid to jump in and try it. Now our future potential customer we talked to yesterday said, I don't care what it looks like, it just has to work. That might be true for her, but I think the average user, the average customer is going to want something that looks polished and friendly. So what we're going to do is emphasize that from the beginning, that we're going to have a clean, modern looking, professional. It doesn't have to look professional, actually. It just needs to be clean, modern looking, polished design. We want to stay away from something that looks like it was designed in the late 90s. And we can achieve this pretty easily through available templates that you can many times use for free, or even you can purchase at low cost. And you also get the mobile friendly ability with those templates as well. So this might sound kind of daunting, especially for me, because I'm not a designer by any means, a graphical designer. It is daunting if you have to create this from scratch, but there are many templates out there that you can just adopt and use as a starting point. So I don't think that's going to be too bad. So the plan then for tomorrow is to start thinking about, I want to see if I want to get into this today, but kind of running out of time. Start mocking up. We're going to go back to the whiteboard, so that'll be exciting, but no math this time. This time we're going to start mocking up sort of the user experience as they progress through the site, and just rough out some ideas. And we might get our customer back on the stream to look at the mocked up ideas that we come up with, and then give us some feedback early in the design process before we actually start coding those things, which is where the real time investment begins. So if you've ever heard the term, by the way, agile design, going back to the customer very frequently and with only short iterations, that's at the most fundamental layer, that's the definition of agile design. And so you'll see, I just want to take small steps and go back to the customer. Small step, back to the customer. Small iterations, back to the customer. So we'll start mocking out the user experience. We'll just sketch on the whiteboard what this might look like, and then we'll bring our customer back in to give us some feedback. So we'll start on that tomorrow. And then what I hope to do is start actually writing some code starting on Monday, and see how quickly we can get to this minimum viable product. One last thing I wanted to talk about today is I've been wrestling with, there are some things about building a product that are excruciatingly boring. One of those things is installing software, right? So to get to this next step where we're actually writing code, we're going to have to install some software. And the software that you use for writing code is sometimes huge, and it takes quite a while to install. But I did make a pledge on the first episode of this stream to be 100% transparent. And I think there are some people that might appreciate seeing how to get something installed. Where do you download it from? How do you install it? How do you set it up the way that you want it set up so that you can have good productivity and so on. So I think there are some people that would like to see that, but it does tend to be pretty boring, and I'm trying to keep these to an hour length initially. So I've been wrestling, how do we deal with that situation? So what I think I'm going to do is some of these things I'm going to record offline, not live. I'll do it at night or on the weekends, and I will record them, but then I'll go back through and chop out the excruciatingly boring part, and I will just leave the moderately boring part, and then I'll upload that to the stream, to the channel, so that if you are interested in going through the steps of installing the software or whatever it is that we're doing, you'll have access to that, but we won't use up our live time going through all those steps. So I think that's a good compromise, and it maintains our transparency, but also keeps the stream moving along a little bit. So we'll start sketching up concepts tomorrow. We'll get our customer back in here to look at those, and then early next week, we'll start writing some code. So that's it for today's episode. As always, leave a comment below. If you have any questions or comments, click the like button. Please subscribe to the channel, and definitely check out our Patreon site here and support what we're doing. Send us a message on here as well and say, we like what you're doing. The information is helpful, helps me think about starting a business. Because ultimately, I do want, the whole point of the stream is to show you that there's nothing magical going on when you start a business. It's just kind of step by step by step. Even though it feels like it's taking a long time, if you look back at this week, we've already accomplished quite a lot in 3 or 4 hours, less than 3 or 4 hours. And we've collected quite a lot of information. And hopefully also the message you're getting is, when you're designing a software-based product, what I see happening a lot is people jump right into writing code on day one. And that's I wanted to give the message that you're going to help your cause a lot, and you're going to have more success if you do a lot of market research and a lot of, talk to potential customers and see what they want, what features do they find important, and do a few iterations, some sketches before you get into writing code. Because once you start writing code, then you really start to accumulate time investment, and that's going to slow you down. And going back to the fail fast idea, writing code is going to prevent you from failing fast, because it's going to take some time before you have something to show anybody. So we're going to stay, for the moment, we're going to stay on our fail fast approach. make some sketches, get the customer in here, and then we'll start writing code next week. So that's all I have for today, and I appreciate you watching the stream, and we'll see you next time.